So welcome to today's webcast, and I'm glad you're here. It's the 3A's and the 3C's of productivity with none other than myself, Sally Foley-Lewis, and I am really kind of excited about the 3A's and the 3C's because I think what they do is get us into a simpler way of looking at productivity. And when I talk about productivity with people, sometimes there's a lot of challenges that come up, and I think that the key pieces that we need to think about is actually identifying what gets in our way first. And so, you know, a lot of people have said me or myself. The other one is getting that to deal with perceptions and expectations. You know, the perceptions that we might have of ourselves or what we think others think of us, as well as the tape that plays in our head about what we think is expected of us, plus also the real expectations that our loved ones put on us. I think it also gets in the way because it creates a level of stress, and that stress then triggers behaviours. The imposter syndrome, I think, comes into this, and it also aligns with you getting in the way of your own success or your own way. The overwhelm. And for those of you that might not know what imposter syndrome is, it's the belief that you're not qualified to be doing what you're doing, the belief that you're not good enough. The comments that you often hear when it comes to imposter syndrome be, geez, they must have been drunk when they chose me, or I really don't know what I'm doing here. I don't think I'm qualified for this, or I'm good enough. So that's the imposter syndrome that can really get in our own way. And also, other more tangible things are like when we have these great ideas and we start acting on them immediately rather than just capturing them, and we allow ourselves to be distracted, you know, the squirrel in the tree kind of thing. We have a line around this house where we just sort of yell out the word squirrel just to catch ourselves in case we're going off track. It's not to say that the idea is bad. It's about, hang on a minute, is that exciting, important, and which one do I need to be working on first? And the other thing that some of us can get into is avoiding difficult conversations. And so this shows up for a lot of small business when it comes to dealing with the expectations from loved ones is one way, that personal thing around saying, look, I really want to chase this dream. I need you to back me up in these ways. And then the other side of it is also around when we have our suppliers or when we've got virtual staff or even project staff. It's about stating our expectations and handling things when they go wrong. And I say when, it's because, let's face it, it's not an if. We hope to minimise the whens, but they are whens. And I think that's one of the things that gets in our own way as well. We have this tape that plays in our head about how they're going to think about me, or you know, how I deal with this person if I have this difficult conversation. And these often also appear in bigger companies as well, where we've got more permanent staff. I should just remind everyone also on the call that my dogs participate in these webcasts often, so you might hear them in the background. And so, you know, it's also the overwhelm. There's so much that a small business operator has to deal with. You know, it's not just the expertise that we show up with, but it's also the administration, the selling, the promotions, the marketing, customer relations, the admin, the finance, the taxes, we are the head of every single department in this business when we're in small business, and that is hugely overwhelming. You know, some of the things that happen, or what I hear when I'm working with many people in different industries and experiences, is that they have a lack of or messy prioritizing, and it's not just the work, but it's also self and family that get in the way. And Ross, welcome to the webcast. I am recording this, so you can catch up on the beginning bits later on if you wish. The other things I hear is that we have a real struggle with discerning the urgent versus the important in the context of a return on your effort and your investment. Hi Ross, thanks, welcome. Other things I hear is about being stuck in the detail or distractions and interruptions and not knowing how to stay focused, which we talked about just before. Multitasking still happens, and I think we get wrapped up in the adrenaline rush of multitasking that makes us or kind of tricks us into thinking that we're getting stuff done, but it actually says we're being busy, and we have to stop and go, well, is this busy actually achieving anything, or is this just busy? And also poor relationships because of poor presence. And for the small business person, this can include our loved ones, or even the relationship we have with ourselves is really important, and with our staff as well. And whether it's virtual staff or actual employees, you know, we get so bogged down in so many things to do that we don't stop and actually be present sometimes. And people see it. I mean, you know yourself when someone's not listening to you, you kind of know it. Even when you can't even see their face, you know they're not there. You know they're not present. So these are some of the things that I hear constantly. And so when I work with people, some of the situations that arise, I just want to share three with you. Did a bit of review work with a tiny project team. They were constantly pulled in multiple directions to be involved in, take charge of, and initiate projects. The stakeholders across the state, across Queensland. Now, if you worked in that project team, you hardly had time to warm your chair, and you were that busy, and you could feel it when you went into their office. You know, one of the team members after the review really struggled to let go of one particular project. It was their baby, and you know, they nurtured it, they started it, they knew every aspect of that project. So, you know, you can appreciate why they struggled to let go of it. But within just a few weeks, they realised, you know, he hadn't actually been getting enough of a return on his investment when it came to the effort, the time, the thinking, the forcing of trying to get some engagement. And so the impact wasn't there, and finally came to a realisation and that it was dropped, that project went. And that same team member also noticed that he had time to read and engage deeper in other projects. And so he estimated an extra 4 hours per week were taken back to be reinvested in more valuable activities, which is really kind of cool. Now, it wasn't an easy change, but it was a necessary change for that person. Some other work I did with a lady by the name of Georgia, we did a productivity audit, and she realised that she was spending so much more time on tasks than she had assumed that she was. Things were taking longer than what she thought. She also realised she spent more time proofreading other people's work than she thought she should. So the audit kickstarted a review of how proofreading would be handled in their team before it even got to Georgia's desk. And one of the great things that we did with this was not just about the task that Georgia did, but the leadership that went behind it. You know, she actually pushed it back to the team and said, okay, I need a better quality document before it gets to my desk. How do you guys as a team want to manage this? And so she ended up getting 45 minutes easily back into a day. And that added up to 3 hours and 45 minutes a week. That's what her estimate was. You know, another person I've worked with stopped saying yes to coffee meetings and pick your brain sessions, which I think is like, oh, can I just shout you a cup of coffee? I just want to pick your brains. You know, I think they're really big time consumers when it comes to a small business operator. And so once this person, Paula, she stopped doing that, and when she understood her boundaries and her values better, you know, she was able to take back at least 3 to 4 hours per week. And I think that's a key piece for anyone in small business. And I just want to put out any comments so far around that. Does it resonate with you? Does it make sense, or any questions? Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Bradley. Yeah, thanks, Ross. Cool. Yeah, so in this session, I want us to get into identifying, should be a meal at least. Yes, definitely. Nice work, Ross. We'll identify what your productivity level is at, and maybe why, and learn the 3A's and the 3C's, which is the core of this session, and looking at how important focus, attention, and presence is for your productivity and relationships. And along the way, we'll get some tips and strategies. And And please feel free to contribute your tips and strategies. Let's make this the collective wisdom. And if you aren't already signed up, then in addition to the webinar, I'll pop you into the weekly productivity notes. So you will get the free Management Success Skills ebook as well as the Productive Leader white paper. So that's where we're at with this session today. And if I haven't said it before, please add questions. If you want to come off mute, let me know. You know, share, please do, because that I think is really important, that we have that collective wisdom operating for us all. So this is what I call the productivity model. And while I know that no one's at invisible, I know sometimes we can dip into the invisible where everything we do feels like it just doesn't show up or doesn't get us anywhere. Now, we only sometimes probably visit invisible sometimes. But where I think most people play is somewhere at the react, the decide and achieve. And we kind of ebb and flow up and down those. And I'm pretty sure some of you have seen this model before, but it's about identifying where we're at. If we're just reacting, you know, we're putting out fires, we're not really feeling like we're getting progress. We're just keeping our head above water because everything that comes in gets reacted to. At this point, our focus needs to be to resolve. You know, resolve what's important and what's urgent. And that usually comes off the back of an audit. Now, if we're at the decide level, it means that we've got a little bit of important, urgent prioritizing going on. Now it's time to get more discerning and really understanding the value of which things we do. React, decide, sometimes automate for some tasks. Yeah, good one. Definitely. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think when we're shifting from decide to achieve, then it's looking at every task that you take on now, asking that question, could this be automated? Could this be systematized? Can I get this ready to be automated? You know, I think that's awesome. And of course, when we're at that upper level, when we are prolific and prospering, it's about thinking, well, what more can I be doing? How can I continually grow this business or this dream that I have? Because these are dreams that we're chasing. And I think it's so important that we've got the systems, the mindset and the productivity in place. So that's the model. And if you have any questions about that, I'm more than happy to yammer on about this for ages. But I just want to bring that up because I think it's important to think about where you're at so that you know what you need to be focusing on. And if you've got a copy of the book, The Productive Leader, and I know some of you do, this is really unpacked a lot more in the book. So, but happy to take questions as well. So let's look at the 3A's and the 3C's. And so this is what this model looks like with you smack bang in the middle. And I think it's important to understand that when you have any sort of model like this, it's not just the three big pieces around the outside of any Venn diagram, it's also the intersections. You know, what is the nitty gritty that goes in between to make these things happen? So the first one I want us to look at, the first A, is action. When I talk about action, some people go, well, duh, in order to achieve stuff, you need to act. I think that's a very simplistic view of it, because if we all had a little bit more action in our day, I think we'd be achieving a little bit more. So action is actually a really complex kind of situation, I think, for some of us. You know, it gets in the way when we have our procrastination triggering us off. You know, we don't actually act as much as we could be because we're procrastinating. And that procrastination comes in with the things that get in our way, such as the overwhelm, such as too many things to do. There might be a fear of failure. It might be a fear of success. It might be boredom. It might be a concern that if I do this, then my clients are going to expect more, so I probably shouldn't start doing it. We need to understand why we're procrastinating. Because when we understand why we're procrastinating, we can then build in the measures to move us along and make changes. And I think that's a real key thing there. There's a great book in Charles Duhigg's book, I can't remember the title of it right now, but he talks about the habit loop, and that's connected to this as well. And he talks about that there's reward and triggers. And I think it's understanding what reward we get when we actually procrastinate. because our procrastination comes in also with habits. And I've just noticed that I spelt procrastination with 2 P's because it's a very important word. There you go. Now, the other thing around action is our planning. And I know sometimes some people think planning is really boring, or on the other hand, people spend too much time making a really detailed to-do list that all the time's gone and then they don't actually do anything. What I think is really important is that we step back and we go, well, what do I want to achieve in this next 90 days, in this quarter? And to do that, what do I need to have achieved every month? And by the end of every week, what do I want to have done? And then today, what am I going to do? And at the end of today, write my list for tomorrow, so that when I turn up tomorrow, I've got no excuses. My list is already ready for me. Doing your list at the end of one day, ready for the next, helps save you time in the morning. A lot of people I know that I've worked with have made that shift to do their to-do list the night before, the afternoon before. It's the last thing they do. It seals off their day. It says today is done because I've done my to-do list for tomorrow. And then instead of doing a to-do list in the morning when they get up, they actually write in their gratitude journal, or they actually do something just for them that fills their soul rather than just something business related. Now, I know that can go hand in hand, but that was a transition for some people. I feel like my to-do list is never ending. So do you create a new one every day? Yes. If your to-do list is never ending, you've got 2 ways of looking at that. And it's a great question. Number one way of looking at it is, if your to-do list is never ending, it means you're gainfully employed for work. And I don't mean employed as an employee, but it means you've got work to do. So that's good, because imagine if you didn't have a to-do list. No one wants you. No one's engaging you. No one's booking your services or your products. So I think that's a really key mindset shift, is that thank goodness I've got a to-do list, because I'm needed and wanted and I offer something of really true value to my market. Now, the other way of looking at it is, yeah, you have enough work. That's good. The other one, or the other way of looking at it is, if your to-do list is overwhelming, then cut it down. And what I mean by that is actually move that to-do list to the side and put just maybe 3 items on your to-do list. And if those 3 items are overwhelming, then break them down again. And that's how you get to do the small chunking, which is really what's going to help you do help you get forward. You know, it's small steps often make big transformations. And that's the chunking down piece. Oh, nice segue, Bradley. Well done. You know, it is. If it's overwhelming you, then keep breaking it down. Keep breaking it down so that you feel as though, oh, I can get that done in a couple of minutes, or I can get that done in half an hour. Easy as. Easy to say, but takes practice. It's like exercising and building up muscle mass. This is the stuff that requires a continual effort, and the more effort you put in, the easier it becomes. You know, and that's why I talk about action without motivation. And I think it's really important to think about action without motivation. And what I mean by that is, don't expect or don't sit there waiting for motivation, because motivation actually comes after action. When we take action and we can see progress, we get motivated by that. We go, oh, look how much I've achieved. Look what I've done. And from that then comes the productivity. And because we've achieved something, the byproduct is confidence. And so that should come back round to keep your action going and your motivation going. So key pieces in that is that when we actually start and we divorce this need or this concept that we need motivation to act, and just get in and act anyway, it helps build motivation. And when we've got that motivation, then our attention, our focus, and our presence can become a lot easier. And they show up a lot easier. They take a lot less effort. Any questions about that? I missed your comment, Ross. A great end of day ritual. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. No, we're all good. Okay. Cool. So the next A is accountability. And the key for this piece around accountability is that it helps keep you honest. It helps keeps you responsible. You know, when we actually have someone keeping us accountable, we don't want to look bad. We don't want to let them down. You know, in all honesty, we're letting ourselves down. But when we hold ourselves up and be accountable to others, then, you know, there's nothing worse than having to show up to a session with a coach or a mentor or even a loved one who's prepared to keep you accountable, is letting them down, telling them that you haven't done what you said you'd do. Now, there might be absolutely valid reasons, and that's fine, you know. And as a coach and a mentor, if any of my clients come to me and say, I didn't do this, if that doesn't get quickly followed by, I did this instead because this made more sense, then we have a conversation about accountability. We have a conversation about the choice of actions. You know, I don't mind that a client says, I didn't do my homework because it didn't make sense because X, Y, and Z made more sense. Then I'm okay with that because they've thought about it and they took action. Big piece there with accountability. Accountability also helps that you're guaranteed progress, you know, so you can track how you're getting along. And I think that's a really valuable one. It's a byproduct of accountability in a lot of regards, but it's there and it keeps you on track moving forward. So which means it actually accelerates your performance. And I think that's a key thing that we need to see that. We need to see that we're actually improving, and that's a confidence piece as well. And when we hold ourselves accountable publicly, it actually helps to validate us. Now, I wrote The Productive Leader within 3 months, and the way in which it became a 3-month project, which I didn't think it would. I was a bit flabbergasted when my mentor said, you can do this in 3 months. I pretty much spat my coffee out because I was sipping coffee at the time. And I said, tell me exactly how you think this can be done. So we wrote the plan. So we picked the date in the calendar and we worked backwards from that. And the first thing she made me do was create a very public accountability piece. So I had to get the cover design done first. I had to get the web page up, and I had to take sales, pre-orders. And just to, you know, rub salt in the wound to prove that this thing works, she was the first person to buy or pre-order a copy of the book. You know, I had people paying for something. So I had to get it out there. I had to actually deliver on the promise that people had paid for. Yeah, 3 months to a book. It was amazing, Ross. I had the book written in 3 months. It took another month for the actual technicalities of printing and stuff like that, which infuriated and frustrated this little impatient bunny. But the actual writing was 3 months. And so, and that's all down to that public accountability. And my mentor, every phone call, every email, where are you at with the book? What's your word count? Where's the editing? So that was just perfect. It just kept me going and kept pushing me, because the last thing I wanted to do was look bad and not deliver. I was excited to receive it. Can't wait. Hey, good. That's awesome. I'm glad. Thanks, Brad. So that's the accountability piece. And here's the thing with accountability, which I don't think too many people tell you about, is don't necessarily, I'm going to cough, sorry. Sorry about that. Don't necessarily expect the person who you're asking to help you stay accountable know how to do that. You know, qualified and coached and experienced coaches and mentors, they know how accountability works, or they should do, and they should have learnt that as part of their learning and development and qualification or certification. But if you've got a peer or a colleague who you want them to be your accountability buddy, the biggest way to make that a success is for you to tell them how they can help you. Tell them how to keep you accountable. Don't expect them to know, okay? And I think that's a trick that no one ever talks about. That's probably the biggest tip that I can give you about accountability. Any questions on that so far? AG. Oh, good. All good. Nice abbreviation, Ross. Thank you. Cool. Okay. So the third A is achievement. And what we mean by achievement is pretty obvious, but it's about us reinforcing good habits. When we have achieved something, we feel good about it. So therefore, we're reinforcing those neural pathways and we're going, oh, do that again. That's good. And so it also reinforces that we've got the skills and the knowledge to keep going and to keep doing this. Therefore, we have some credibility. And with that credibility links us to being able to make sure that we continue and see how the loop is starting to come forward. Achievement helps us reinforce that loop. And I think that's it's an obvious one, but it's one that needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be explicitly stated at times, because when you look at what you've achieved, I think if you look back over your career that you've had, or your time as a small business operator over the last 10 years or so, I bet you haven't stopped long enough to look at what you've achieved. And when you look at those achievements, you can then work out, well, what did I learn from that? What good things came of that can be reinforced? So I'm going to put it back to you and say, what's at least one massive big achievement that you could share right now? I want to know from you. Testimonials say a lot for us. They do. Absolutely. Paid MC work, yeah, nice one. I think that we need to go back and look at those thank you notes and look at those testimonials and look at the income. You know, when you look at what we get paid for a certain piece of work, and acknowledge ourselves for that. And I think that's really cool. So thank you for sharing that. So at the intersections of action and accountability and achievement are the 3C's. I'm sorry, I'm about to lose my voice. So I'm just going to put myself on mute and have another swig of water. Hold on, sorry. Sorry about that. I've just got a tickle in my throat, so I do apologise. So clarity. Clarity sits at the intersection of action and accountability. And what I mean by clarity is know what you're doing. What are you trying to achieve? What's the big goal here? And then make sure that they're smart. And we've all heard of SMART goals, the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. You know, making sure they're written down. If they're not written down, then all they are ideas flying around in the sky. And they're much harder to catch once they've already been let go of. Shared, also share them with people. That's that public accountability piece, which I think is really important. And review them. I can't tell you, many years ago when I worked for state government, we would go and do planning exercises with a lot of organisations and local government authorities, and we would work with the stakeholders to create amazing sport and recreation infrastructure or program plans. They were awesome plans, but then they would just sit on their shelves. And I always come back every month or so and say, okay, where are you at with these? What are you up to? Oh, well, and I said, well, we've done the wrong plan, you know. So make sure you review them, keep them living. If you have a team, then the plan and the goals need to be discussed every meeting, even an element of it. And when you've achieved them, they need to be celebrated. So critical to celebrate. You know, people get jaded if they don't have their efforts acknowledged, and we know that as leaders when we've been in employment, but even for ourselves. Dance around the kitchen for 5 minutes and celebrate what you've done. It's so important. I'm not trying to be flippant. I think it's really important. And at the other intersection between accountability and achievement is coaching. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean a formal coach, but it could well mean a coach or a mentor or some champion you've got in your corner to help you stay objective. Excuse me. Oh, I do apologise. They can challenge your assumptions. You know, they're going to be supportive without letting you get away with too much at times. They're also not a well-intended loved one. And what I mean by that is our loved ones will gush all over us, or they'll not understand why you chose to be self-employed or run a small business, and they think that a paycheck is going to be far more stable. You know, someone who's external to us also has that clarity of distance. And I think that's really important, that we have someone who's on our team but not in our team, if that makes sense. So the coaching, the champion, I think is a mission critical piece. You know, I've mentioned my mentor. I've had mentors and coaches for years, and I think it's so important that if you want to reach out and have someone coach you, you need to know that they're coachable. You need to be able to qualify them, and I'm happy to have that conversation later with any of you. But having someone who can be objective, challenge and support, and have that clarity of distance will be the elements of success for your own productivity. And at the third intersection, and this sits between achievement and action, is confidence. And so this means that when we see all these other elements coming together, we're prepared to play a bigger game. We're prepared to step up and take more risks. We also tend to start valuing ourselves more, which means our price can go up because we actually understand that we are delivering an exceptional proposition for our market. We find that selling ourselves becomes less of a pain or a chore, and it's also less about selling as opposed to presenting an offer of value for someone and saying, look, this may or may not work for you. This is what I do, and this is how I do it. It becomes more of a service. We don't sit there and step back and say, well, excuse me, I hate selling myself. We actually say more along the lines of, how dare I deprive people who might need my perspective? How dare I sit back and not be prepared to make it accessible for people? You know, and when we've got more confidence in what we do and how we show up in the world, we often have a little less comparisonitis. We start to compare ourselves a little less than we used to because we stand true in our own worth and our own value. And I think this is really important. So I have a quick question, particularly around the coaching element. You know, who's had a coach before? Awesome. Yes, you've had coaches. Cool. And have they been... Lindsay Adams helped with referrals and relationships. Yes, Lindsay Adams is brilliant with... He's the relationships guy, definitely. Yeah, good call. Yeah. So I think there's some real value there in finding someone to be your champion. And also, I think, Bradley, what you've just mentioned is a really important piece. You may have a mentor or a coach for one specific thing, and that's it, and not necessarily feel like you have to have that mentor or coach for everything. I know years ago I had a mentor because I was struggling with some elements within the public sector. And so I found a mentor who had been in the public sector for a long time. And so that was great. I would not ever expect them to be able to mentor me on anything else, but they were perfect for the public sector element. So that was good. Thanks for sharing that. So that's that piece. And I think one of the things that is really important is that when we put all that together and look at that model, we've got action and accountability and achievement. And drawing them all together and tying them up neatly and focusing on you, fair and square in the middle, is the clarity, the coaching, and the confidence. And I really think it's important that we replace busy with value. And when you do that, you'll get the returns. And when I talk about value, what I mean there is about understanding the value of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and when you do it, and who you do it with, so that you actually get the returns you deserve. And so I just want to open up for any questions, any comments. We've got about 7 minutes left. Feel free to come off mute if you want to. So if you're thinking about any questions there, I just want to share with you that I do have a mentoring program that might be of value or interest to you. It's almost like a menu. You choose what you want from it. So feel free, if you want a copy of the brochure for Pump for Small Business, which is Pump Up My Productivity, it's a 90-day program, which is the long one. And it really hones in on action, accountability, and achievement. So if you'd like a copy of the brochure, just pop yes into the chat box, and I'll have a look to see if there are any. Fire away on procrastination if you want. Okay, fire away on procrastination. What do you mean fire away? Do you mean talk about procrastination? Oh, excuse me. Yes, okay, right, thank you for that clarity. Okay, so for procrastination, there are multiple triggers, and so it's important to understand what triggers that procrastination. Do you know what triggers yours? And here's the other thing, different things trigger it. So let me try and unpack that a bit more for you. I'm just going to go to some notes I've got here because this will make sense. Oh, sorry about the coughing. When we procrastinate, what happens is we either have guilt or demotivation or stress coming in from different sources, and that can trigger us into sort of a downward spiral into more procrastination. So sometimes we feel overwhelmed, and if that's the case, then we need to talk to ourselves about what training do you need, or what support do you need, or understanding how to chunk down the activities in order to determine what the measures are and what success might be and what timeframes are in place. Maybe it's about being afraid of success, and asking yourself, if I succeed in this, what else is expected of me? Or if that's the case, then actually talking to someone about it and unpacking what is the real expectation going on here. Just because I do this once doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to have to do it again, and managing those expectations. Sometimes procrastination can come about because we resent having that responsibility. We don't do it. And when I've talked to a couple of clients in the past, they often say they resent having to do their taxes. And so therefore they procrastinate on it. Well, then we unpack that a little bit further, and the value of actually paying tax, particularly in Australia, on the system that provides us with a lot of good healthcare, education, blah, blah, blah. And we look at, okay, yes, we've got the most complicated tax system in the world, but what's the ramifications of if we don't pay our tax? And so we unpack that further, and then we find systems and processes in order to be able to complete the tax in a timely, less painful way. Excuse me. One of the biggest procrastinators is the fear of failure. And I think it's about understanding truly what's the significant chance that you'll actually fail, like what really could happen if you fail. Who will stop loving me? Really? People actually don't care that much about us than what we probably think they do. We aren't actually the axis of the earth, which I know is devastating for me most days when I wake up and realise that. Because the truth of the matter is people don't care about me. I'm not that important. So I have to put it into perspective. And failing is actually a fantastic thing to do. Without failure, how do we learn? It's a learning thing. I didn't fail. I've just learnt that's not how to do it, which is flippant. But the reality is, that's what it's all about. It's a learning. That's not how you do something. Another procrastination is not knowing where to start, and therefore we need to ask. And we don't often ask enough. And I think that's really important, as learning to how to ask people how you do something, reaching out for that assistance. There are a couple of other procrastinations, but things like afraid of conflict, or also pointless or boring tasks. So that's some of the tips and tricks in there. Cool, here's to making more mistakes. Absolutely. If you know who Matt Church is, he talks about failure, and in his Thought Leaders program, you come up with, say, 20 project ideas. I'm going to use just general language, of which 50% of them you actually are going to fail intentionally. And it's important to get used to that failure. And it's important to use it as a learning process. So that's what that's about. Any other questions? So as I said, I've got coming up the Pump for Small Business. There's a workshop coming up on the 16th of November, and out of that comes a whole range of resources. The copy of the book, plus the workbook, plus also there's coaching, and there's some accountability, obviously, that's going to come with it. And there's a group webcast as well. So there's more accountability that can happen to make sure that people are celebrating the successes, discussing the roadblocks, and making sure as the collective wisdom we help remove those roadblocks. I love this program because it actually, you see a lot of fast successes quickly with this program. And as I said, small steps often, routinely, regularly mean big transformation. So if you'd like a copy of the brochure, please just pop yes into the text box there, or you can email me, sally@sallyfoley-lewis.com, and I can shoot you through a copy of the brochure. My designers and I track time for all our client work. Should we be tracking time for our own business too? So we can track how much time. I think it's about a time audit is okay. I think definitely do a time audit and see what happens, see what the lessons can be learnt from it. You want to do a time audit that some people say 2 weeks, because that way it captures some of the odd activities that happen over a fortnight. Or you might want to start with when you do a particular thing within your business and you're not too sure exactly how long it does take, then track the timing of that. So you might want to go by a type of task, or you want to just track the whole time spent at work. Either way is fine. I think it's a great idea because it does give you some insight. And you'd be surprised. I've had clients say to me, I have no idea I spent hours and hours doing that when I really only thought it was an hour. Now, there's two ways of looking at that. They were thoroughly engrossed and enjoyed doing it, and it was part of what they do, and that was fantastic. But the other way of looking at it was, I need to actually enjoy what I'm doing, but do it faster so I can get on with other work. We need to be out selling, we need to be out delivering, and we need to be, thinking, doing the thinking work within our business. And so those three elements are so important to get in the right measure. So yeah, I think do a time audit and see how it goes. I'd love to know what comes of it, Brad. That'd be awesome. Awesome system for line and project managers. Tell me more, Ross. Awesome system for line and project managers. Time is king. Yes, it is. Definitely. Yeah. I can remember years and years and years ago, I was a green little puppy in the public service, and we had to do a time audit, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. But and it went for a month, and it should never have gone for a month. I think 2 weeks is fine. But it was a real eye-opener. It was an absolute eye-opener as to how time was wasted on so much stuff at times, whereas other times you didn't get enough time to do something. So definitely, yeah. We are at the 45-minute mark. I want to respect your time. I'm happy to stay online for a bit longer to answer any questions, but otherwise, thank you. Thank you for being here. You're welcome, Brad. Take care, and we'll be in touch. I appreciate any comments or suggestions or questions. You can get in touch with me at sally@sallyfoley-lewis.com. Happy to talk more about what's in the pump program and see if it's a right fit for you as well. Please reach out. Love to help. Thank you, Ross. Feel free to jump off when you're ready to jump off, and take care.